It was a Thursday evening, just after 6 p.m., when the city was alive with its usual rush. Tired office workers, blaring taxis, and the faint scent of grilled meat from roadside vendors. Thapelo was on his way home, following the same shortcut he took every day through Park Station. He never noticed the posters on the underpass wall. Not until that evening. One of them caught his eye. Faded, weather-beaten, and barely clinging to the brick. It was a missing child poster. At first, nothing unusual, but as he moved closer, his feet slowed. The photo, it looked exactly like him. A 6-year-old boy. Big eyes, slight droop in the left eyelid, a scar under the right one, identical to Thapelo's. Beneath the photo, it read, Thapelo Makoana, last seen in Mamelodi, 2004, age 6. His chest tightened. Same face, same features. Even the chipped tooth in the boy's smile. A detail Thapelo always believed came from a fall in primary school. He blinked, stepped back, and looked around. No one else seemed to notice. He reached for his phone and snapped a photo. That moment, small and silent, was the spark. The beginning of a journey into a life that wasn't his. Or maybe a life that had always been his, but stolen. That night, Thapelo couldn't sleep. The image of that poster, that child's face, kept echoing in his mind like a haunting melody. He sat at his desk, staring at the photo on his phone, zooming in, comparing it to his reflection in the mirror. The resemblance was undeniable. The eyes, the shape of the jaw, the tiny mole near the left temple, even the way the boy's smile leaned slightly to one side, it was exactly like his. Thapelo stood up suddenly, rushed to his room, and began pulling out old albums from under his bed. His mother had kept them, she always said. Every memory, every birthday, every milestone. But as he flipped through page after page, something strange became clear. There were no photos of him before grade 1. No baby pictures, no first steps, no birthdays under age 6. Just a clean start. Neat. Too neat. Thapelo checked the medical files in the bedroom drawer. A few immunization cards, all starting in 2005. A school acceptance letter? Grade 1. Nothing from before. That sense of unease began to grow. So he walked into the kitchen where his mother was cooking supper. He held up one of the albums. "Ma," he asked gently, "where are my baby pictures?" She turned slowly, wooden spoon in hand, and gave a short laugh. "You always ask funny questions, Thapelo. You lost them years ago, remember? You spilled juice on the whole box." But Thapelo didn't laugh. "You always told me they were in the cupboard above the fridge," he said. "I never touched that box." Her eyes shifted for just a second. "Thapelo," she said sharply, "what is this about?" "I saw a poster," he replied. "A missing boy, from 2004. His name was Thapelo. He looks exactly like me." The air in the kitchen changed. His mother stopped stirring. Her body tensed, and for the first time in his life, Thapelo noticed fear in her eyes. "Stop chasing shadows," she said, her voice flat. "You have no idea what you're digging into." But her tone wasn't annoyed. It was scared. That night, after she went to bed, Thapelo ordered a DNA test kit online. It would arrive in less than 3 weeks. He didn't know it then, but those 3 weeks would be the last days of the life he thought was his. The days crawled. Thapelo checked his email constantly. He barely spoke to anyone. Even his coworkers noticed the shift, how quiet he'd become, how distracted. At night, he watched his mother carefully. She had stopped asking him questions. But one afternoon, he saw her packing things, quietly taking down old photos from the wall, putting them into a box and slipping it under the bed. A few days later, he noticed she'd cleaned out the garage, where old memories were once stored. The test arrived on day 17. Thapelo swabbed his mouth, placed the sample in the container, and sealed it. He asked his mother for her sample. She gave it to him without hesitation, almost too casually. "Are you still chasing that nonsense?" she asked, smiling. But her eyes, they were watching, measuring, waiting. On day 21, the results came in. One line, simple, cold. No biological relationship detected between sample A and sample B. Thapelo didn't move for a long time. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't unlikely. It was impossible. The woman who raised him wasn't his mother. He printed the result and walked into the living room, holding it in a trembling hand. She was watching TV. She didn't look up. "What is this?" he asked. "I told you, Thapelo. I don't know what you're chasing." "Then explain this." He dropped the printout in front of her. She stared at it. No words, just the faintest crack in her composure. Then she whispered, "I gave you a life." He stepped back. "You stole one. You were in the system. They didn't care about you. I cared." "So who am I?" he shouted. "What's my name?" She stared at him, her voice shaking, and then she said it. "Your name was Cabello before us." Cabello, the name from the poster, the name that lived in another life, another mother, another truth. He stood there, frozen in place, as the weight of it all settled in. His life wasn't his. His name wasn't his. Everything he believed was a lie. After that night, the house felt different, colder. Every smile his mother gave him felt rehearsed, stiff, like she was waiting for something to happen. Or worse, for something to return. Thapelo, or rather, Cabello, spent most of his time locked in his room, digging. He searched every drawer, every box, until he found the red folder. It was in the laundry cupboard, buried behind old towels. The label read, medical. But inside, it wasn't just medical forms. There were insurance letters, a school application, and then, folded behind a pile of dusty receipts, an old newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Foster Child Abducted, 2004. Authorities investigate internal staff." It was from The Citizen, dated July 18, 2004. The article talked about a 6-year-old boy named Cabello Moquena, who had vanished from a children's home in Mamelodi. No break-ins, no witness accounts, just gone. The child was last seen being picked up by a woman claiming to be his aunt, the article read. No official guardianship documentation was ever verified. And then there was a photo. Blurry, black and white, but clearly visible in the background. A small boy holding hands with a woman. Her face was slightly turned away. But Thapelo knew that posture, that scarf. It was her, the woman who raised him, the woman who called herself his mother. He stared at the image for a long time, and then it hit him, the timeline. That article was dated just 3 months before the first photo of him appeared in the family album. First grade, 2005, a new name, a new home, a fresh start. Something changed after Cabello found the article. It wasn't just what he learned, it was what he began to notice. A gray Toyota Corolla parked across from his flat. Same car, different times of day. Always with a man inside, pretending to scroll on his phone. No Uber sticker, no food delivery logo. Just watching. At first, Cabello told himself he was being paranoid. But one night, around 2 a.m., he heard a soft knock on his door. Not the loud kind, just enough to wake you, just enough to make you listen. When he opened the door, no one was there, except for a folded piece of paper lying on the mat. He bent down, slowly picked it up, and unfolded it. No name, no signature. Just 6 chilling words. You weren't supposed to find it. Cabello felt a chill run through him. The next morning, he went to the nearest police station in Hillbrow. He brought the article, the DNA results, and the note. The officer, a tired man with deep bags under his eyes, read everything silently. Then he slid the documents back across the desk. "You sure you want to go down this road?" he asked. Cabello didn't blink. "I need answers." The officer sighed. "Son, some stories are better left buried." Cabello leaned forward. "What do you mean?" The officer locked eyes with him and spoke slowly. "I mean, Cabello." Cabello's heart stopped. He hadn't told the officer that name. Not once. Cabello knew the name. Marajoyce Mabuza. It was printed at the bottom of the old newspaper article, the social worker assigned to his case in 2004. After weeks of digging, he found her. Retired, living alone in a small village just outside Mahikeng. He took a long-distance taxi early one Saturday morning. The journey was quiet, but his thoughts were loud. Her house was simple. Tin roof, painted blue, laundry hanging across the gate. When she opened the door, she wore a doke, a floral dress, and eyes that had seen too much. Cabello introduced himself, first as Thapelo, then hesitated, and said his real name. Cabello Mokoena. Marajoyce froze. Her hands trembled slightly. She stepped back and began to cry. "I remember you," she whispered. "You used to hum yourself to sleep." She invited him in. Her lounge smelled of vet coke and old books. On her shelf were files, dozens of them, lives she had tried to protect. She pulled out one, KM 2004. Inside were drawings, stick figures, a red house, a woman holding a child's hand, and in the sky, something dark. "Smoke? You drew this when you were 6, she said softly. "You said the house was on fire. You said you were taken." Cabello sat in stunned silence. "She said she was your aunt," Marajoyce continued. "She had papers, forged, we learned later. She convinced the staff, took you home, and then vanished." She held his hand gently. "I tried to find you. I filed reports. But the system, it's not kind to children who disappear." Cabello blinked back tears. He'd never felt this scene before. Never felt like someone had truly tried to protect him. "Do you know where my real mother is?" he asked. Marajoyce nodded slowly. "She never stopped looking for you," she said. "Her name is Sarah. Sarah Mokoena, Limpopo." Cabello sat still for a moment, then whispered, "I want to go home." The journey to Limpopo was long. 7 hours of winding roads, roadside vendors selling mangoes, and thoughts that refused to be quiet. Cabello had Marajoyce's directions, a hand-sketched map, a phone number that barely connected, and a name. Sarah Mokoena. He arrived in the late afternoon. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the dusty road. Her house sat at the edge of a village, small, tin-roofed, painted soft green, with a broken gate and a mango tree growing wild in the yard. A chicken darted past as he knocked on the door. The woman who answered looked older than the photo in the file. Her hair was gray, wrapped tightly. Her hands, rough from years of hard work. Her eyes, tired, but still searching. She looked at him once, just once, and the kettle she was holding dropped from her hands. Clatter. She gasped. "Cabello?" Her knees gave out before he could answer. He caught her. "Mama," he whispered. She sobbed in his arms, loud, broken sobs that had waited 20 years to escape. The neighbors peeked through fences. A dog barked in the distance, but the world, for those few minutes, stood completely still. Inside, she made tea with shaking hands. "They said you were taken by family," she said, her voice raw. "They told me I'd signed a release. I didn't. I never would." Cabello sat silently, staring at a wall filled with photos. Faded portraits of people he'd never met, but who were part of him. She told him everything. How she left him at a care home for a few weeks while she worked 2 jobs, day and night. to support him. How she returned and was told he'd already been claimed. How she searched, reported it, begged authorities, and even got arrested once for disrupting court. They said I was crazy, she said, that I couldn't prove you were mine. She showed him his old birth certificate, the real one. You were born Thapelo Lorado Mogoena. On a Sunday morning, you weighed 3.8 kilograms, and you smiled in your sleep. She reached behind the couch and pulled out a small box. Inside was a single baby shoe, a sock, and a tiny blue hat with the name Thapelo stitched by hand. I never stopped praying you'd come home, she said, voice shaking. And I almost didn't, he whispered. But you did, she said, holding his hand. You did. For the first time in years, Thapelo slept with the window open. No nightmares, just the sound of home. The next morning, Thapelo woke up early. He stepped outside and watched the sun rise over the Limpopo hills. For the first time in years, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. But peace didn't last long. With his mother's blessing, Thapelo made the call. He sent the DNA results, the old article, and his birth certificate to a private investigator in Joburg. He wanted justice. He wanted her, the woman who took him, to face what she did. I don't want her arrested because I'm angry, he told the investigator. I want her arrested because there might be other Thapelos still out there. 2 days later, the investigator called back. We went to her flat. Empty. What do you mean, empty? I mean cleared out, completely. No furniture, no appliances. The walls were scrubbed, not a single photo left. She ran, the man said, and she ran fast. Thapelo took the findings to the SAPS Missing Persons Unit. They reviewed the file, reopened the 2004 case under its original docket number, and filed an arrest warrant under her legal name. But it turned out even that name was likely fake. Her bank accounts had been closed the day Thapelo left Joburg. Her ID hadn't been used since. She didn't just disappear. She erased herself, like a ghost trained to vanish. Thapelo sat across from the lead officer. So that's it? He asked. She just gets away with it? The officer shook his head. No, she didn't get away. She got scared. And that means you made her feel something she's never felt before. Exposed. Still, the truth offered no closure. There was no trial, no confrontation, no courtroom. Just a void where a person used to be. And the haunting realization that for 20 years, Thapelo's life had been built on someone else's lie. But even in that silence, he had something back that mattered more. His name, his mother, and the truth. A few weeks passed. Thapelo stayed in Limpopo, helping his mother around the house, planting vegetables, fixing gutters. The days were peaceful, but the nights were not. At first, it was just bad dreams. Flashes of blue walls, the smell of bleach, the sound of a metal latch locking from outside. Then, slowly, the dreams began to sharpen. One night, Thapelo woke up drenched in sweat. Not from fear, but from recognition. In his dream, he was a child again, sitting on a metal-framed bed in a small room. The floor was bare. The light flickered overhead. The air smelled of damp towels. A woman entered the room. Not the version of her he'd grown up with, not the motherly figure, but someone colder, more clinical. Her voice was low, flat, unemotional. Don't cry, she told the boy. I'm your family now. The boy, him, was crying. Then something pierced his arm. A syringe. And then, blackness. The next night, another fragment. A car door slamming. A ride in the backseat of a hatchback. The sound of a child screaming. But it felt far away. Muffled. Then words whispered in the dark. Your name is Thapelo now. Say it. Say it. Say it. And he did. Again and again. Until the name became his. Until everything else disappeared. Thapelo began, writing down every dream, every sound, every memory fragment. Over time, a story began to take shape, not from documents or DNA, but from his own mind. And it was more terrifying than anything he could have imagined, because this wasn't just a lie he'd been told. It was a reality he'd been forced to believe, a reality that had overwritten who he was. And now, he was finally taking it back. The seasons turned. Limpopo turned green again. Cabello stayed longer than he'd planned. He helped his mother repaint the kitchen, started attending a local youth program, teaching kids how to use computers. And every day, he learned something new about who he really was, not just who he had been. Sarah, his mother, would tell stories at night about the day he was born, how he used to crawl under the bed and hum, how he would cry if anyone but her held him. "You always knew who your mother was," she'd whisper, "even when the world tried to make you forget." One morning, Cabello walked into the local Home Affairs office with two documents, his original birth certificate and the DNA confirmation report. He waited 2 hours, filled out 10 forms, and finally sat across from a tired clerk with smudged glasses. "You're requesting a name restoration?" the man asked. Cabello nodded. "And you're sure?" "Yes," he said. "My name is Cabello Larato Maquena." The clerk stamped the forms, and that was it. After 20 years of confusion, of lies, of ghosts, Cabello had taken back the one thing no one could steal again: his name. Today, Cabello speaks at community events about identity, about stolen childhoods, about believing your instincts, even when the world tells you you're imagining things. He tells his story not with anger, but with purpose, because somewhere out there, there's another child, another name, hidden behind a lie. And maybe, just maybe, if they hear Cabello's voice, they'll find the courage to look behind the curtain and finally say, "This is not who I am."